Hey crew, Conrad coming at you with another iteration of Lost and Found. This time we have 4 cars that Sandcar Buy Sell crew members are looking for. Let's see if we can help them out. But first, I need to mention and apologize for not having some videos up lately. I took a spell on my BMX bike, broke a couple ribs. I've been on the Lazy Boy for a few days, and I'll post an update about that with a couple of pictures on the news that I set up for next week because I missed it this week. So my apologies. All right, let's jump into these cars. Okay, crew, so first up is this 4-seat rear-engine Mazda Rotary powered car. The former owner writes, I know it's a long shot, but has anyone seen this buggy? It's originally a Utah sand car and has a Mazda Rotary engine. Very nice. Looking to buy if someone knows who has it and they want to sell. Thanks. All right, so let's jump into these photos and take a look. All right, first things first. So he mentioned that it has a Mazda Rotary in it, so that's going to be one of our first triggers, right? This photo looks like it was taken in about the 1990s, perhaps, maybe the late 80s. And what do I see here? A San Fernando Buggy Center or Prowler Speed and Custom, which was named later date, out of Canyon Country, California. This is a Sand Sprite chassis. And you might ask yourself, Conrad, how do you know? Because I know. This is my passion, right? All right, enough about me. So what do we see here? We've got a Sand Sprite model, although I don't recall which model this is because it does have the small back seat for kids. Somebody else is going to have to tell me exactly which it is. But what you'll see here is the A-pillar goes up and then it goes straight across, but then it's got this little hoop right before the B pillar, right? How it comes up and around. That is a unique feature of the Prowler's Sand Sprite line on this particular chassis with this being a rear engine. Another thing that I noticed on this is it's got dual shocks in the back, right? We've got one up right here and there's one right here. We'll see that in another picture as well. Fuel tank mounted over the engine right here and some standard aluminum wheels. But that looks like it's got a bigger smoothie on it. That's like the Smoothie 2. So this might be mid-1990s that this photo was taken. I'm not exactly sure. All right, let's check out the next photo. Okay, so now here's a front view on this. And what do we see? Ball joint front beam. And we've got some like, what is that, Rancho RS 9000. We used to run these shocks back in the 1990s on our lifted trucks and whatnot. But a lot of paint detail, okay? We got a red frame, red beam, red arm, red spindles. So there's not going to be a lot of chrome and polish on this car from what I see. That beam is going to be a giveaway, right? Standard fare, VW steering box, couple little lights up front. Switch box, again, is an over-the-counter type item. We've got some, I don't know, these were pretty popular back in the day, the lighting, before we had all the super bitch and Baja Designs and all the other manufacturers. I do see it's got a, why can I never remember what the damn things are called? RPM gauge. I know what the chassis is, but I can never remember what this damn thing's called. Again, we have some standard fare seats. These were over the counter, you know, vinyl covers, yellow and black on a red car. Looks like it's got a 10-inch wide rim in the back. So, you know, the thing about that is these wheels might be long gone. Who knows? But I want to point out the things that I noticed about the car that would trigger me if I was out looking to try to find this one. All right, let's jump into the next photo. Okay, so we do have a rear 3/4 view on this car. And another thing that's unique about it is the soft top, right? A lot of guys will run this up over your head, but this one to cover the kids, that's not something that you see very often. Now here's a good shot of those dual shocks in the back and that Mazda Rotary. I'm really curious about this setup. I hope this car's found because I want to see some more pictures of it. But otherwise, I think that's all I see. Take a look at the lines. I mentioned this hoop right here, how it comes back and bends. Also look at this one. This is another Prowler's design. Round here, and then it tees in right at the top. So there's little features like this that I'm looking for that I noticed that help me identify a chassis. And hopefully by looking at these photos, we can help this fella find this car. All right, let's jump into the next one. Okay, so the next car that we have up is a long travel 4-seater. Let's see what he says. Just wondering if anyone recognizes this sand car. My pops sold it a few years back and I'm curious where it ended up. It is a Ricochet, which to my knowledge isn't too common. Had a turbo EJ 2.5 at the time and it was sold out of Utah. All right, so yeah, Ricochet is actually was based out of Phoenix, Arizona, out in the West Valley. They're not in business anymore, but the Ricochets had some pretty unique lines. So let's take a look at these photos and see what we see. Okay, so what do we see here? Full body, right? We've got this burgundy full body on here. That's super nice. Now let's take a look at the lines of the car, right? So the A-pillar going up, but then we've got this sloping rear end. This is what you usually don't see in a car. Typically these, even when they're roundy, they're more high in the back, right? We've got a bent B pillar with a little bit of lacing put in there to help you get in and out of the car. Your C pillar is actually also bent as well. And here's a distinguishing feature that you're going to see on this car that you're not going to see on a lot of other ones. This rear shock is inboard of the chassis. More often than not, these shocks are ran outside of the chassis. They cut it in and then back through here, and the shocks are hanging out side of the car. So that is a unique feature that if you're helping to find this car, immediately you should be like, okay, black chassis, maybe some burgundy body panels. That rear shock is the indicator for me. Another thing that I notice on this as well is this A-arm. I see just a single link down here, right? Huh. That's interesting. Single shock front end. Looks like black interior, maybe a top on there. All right, let's get into the next photo. All right, what do we see on this one? This is a really interesting feature as well. We've got the aluminum panels, kind of like a tailgate almost, right? And then covering up the engine here as well. Here's the Subaru valve cover, timing cover. Going back to my Volkswagens. And I do see a turbo sticking out here as well. Here's a good shot of that shock inside of the chassis. This is a really swoopy design on this frame. This is really interesting. Next. If you happen to know where this car is at, what did he say? It was sold out of Utah. Hit us up on Sandcar Buy Sell Crew. Oh, speaking of, check this out. Head over to our Facebook group. We are all sand cars all the time. We've got a plethora of information on there. Pictures, trip reports, carnage, tech tips, all of that bitch and stuff. This is a sand car community as well as classifieds. This is the type of stuff you're going to find, right? Take a look at this and this. This is a 4.3 Chevy V6 blown. I mean, I can sit here and listen to this. Like, I just leave it on my monitor all day long. All right, what else are we going to find? Cars for sale, information about food, Flying Friday, pan buggies. I digress. If you love sand cars, head over to Facebook. If you're on there, join our group. Also, if you like our YouTube content, subscribe. Okay, let's get back into the lost cars. Okay, so the last two cars we're going to try to find, these are going to be a little bit more difficult because these were made by Bug Pack or De-Engineering. This is the Invader line, right? And there were a lot of these cars sold, or these chassis sold to guys that built them up back in the 80s and 90s. You know, Johnny Speed and Chrome, if you remember those days, where they had these chassis hanging up in the rafters. Okay, so enough about the history lesson. Let's take a look at this Fugitive two-seat rear engine and see what we see. Traver, who owned this car back in the day, says, has anyone seen this Invader frame? It was built around 1997 or 98 and was sold in Bakersfield, California, and it may be in the Fresno area. Okay, so let's see what we see. There's actually two Invader frames right here. Now, what we're going to see on this is a very long front end, and the seats you sit towards the back, right? A-pillars laid back way far. I mean, you can see the steering wheel almost sticks out the front of the windshield, right? Looks like we've got some low back bucket seats in there, 4-point, maybe 5-point harnesses, VW power plant. Let's see, we've got no front shock towers. Now, if these cars are still sitting as they were, these are the things I'm pointing out. This is a pretty unique wheel, actually. Most guys run a solid spindle. I really like this star design. Fuel tank is mounted right behind the seats. That's a great location, mounted down low. Okay, so we only have 3 photos of this car, so I'm doing the best I can with what we've got, right? I do see a swing axle rear end. This is a stock VW shock mount, right? So they probably took a stock torsion housing and welded it in, which is what most of us did back in the day. You can see the C-pillar comes in, is in line here. That's another Fugitive takeaway. That's all I really see on this one. Man, this is going to be a hard one to find, but see what we can do. Next picture. Okay, I need to remember to not record on Fridays because the landscapers are here with their loud ass equipment. Moving on. Okay, so we got a wheelie shot of this Fugitive. So we've got a VW power plant. We know that. Looks like a tri-mill collector exhaust. This is pretty standard fare stuff, right? So you can get an idea of that C-pillar, how it comes and wraps around the cage. It's got the rear engine cage on it as well. The silver paint, right? If this car has not been repainted, you're going to have to look for that silver. No shock towers. It had the laser star lights, which were super popular back in the day. Tiny switch box down at the floor. So this is just going to have the switches in it, like the 4 switches. No gauges. But otherwise, that's the info we got, and he is based out of Bakersfield, California, maybe in Fresno. Help a guy out, right? Let's see if we can find it. All right, let's check out the last car. This is going to be the toughest, but then again, maybe the simplest. Check this out. So at the Old School Roundup, the first weekend of March, I had a fella come up to me and he says, hey, I'm looking for my old sand car. It has a twin turbo Corvair in it. Have you ever seen one? And I'm like, no, because I'm not a Corvair guy. They like to throw belts, right? So I just have always stayed away from them. But it doesn't mean that we don't have a few thousand Sandcar Buy-Sell crew members that love their Corvair engines. So he says, okay, well, there's 2 photos online. If you can pull those up, and let's see if we can find this car because I'd like to buy it back. I'm like, all right, bro, you got it. So here's one of the things about after I got home and we logged into Facebook, Sandcar Buy-Sell Crew, and posted this up to say, hey, does anybody know where this car is at? We need some information on it. It did come back that it is, in fact, a Bug Pack Fugitive or De-Engineering Fugitive 2-seat mid-engine. This is not his car. This is just for reference because we only have 2 photos of it and they're the back of the car. So some distinguishing fingers. So some distinguishing features about these chassis is they were always beam cars. They did not offer this in an A-arm configuration. Another thing too is if we follow the elbow bar all the way back, there was always a little bin right here to give you a little extra room. And then this hoop comes around, up, over, and down. It's a really nice design, and I can always pick one out. They sold a lot of these chassis, let's put it that way. So then the other distinguishing feature about this as well is going to be the rear shock mounts, how they're welded to the frame. So these are just a couple of things that if you're going to help us look for this car, here's the overall design of the car. But he added a few modifications or changes to his car. Let's take a look at those photos. So here's that twin turbo Corvair, right? So it looks like we got some injectors on there, the air cleaners set up. Here's that bend I was telling you about. These cars all have the same thing with this shock mount on the back. Now, a couple of features on this car. This X, this is aftermarket. This was done at a later date. Maybe the original owner put this one in. Also, behind the seats, look at this bar that comes up and over, right? So I'm guessing he must have drag raced this car as well to put in this extra bracing on it. These are going to be the 2 things that for me, beyond the twin turbo Corvair, because that's number 1, right? But this is number 2 and number 3 indicators that tell me, hey, you know what? I found the car. Also, he's got a soft top that he put on here as well. But otherwise, man, this is going to be a tough one, guys. Oh, but look at this. It looks like it's got some milling in the side panels as well, and a beautiful fuel tank, hand-formed aluminum fuel tank behind the seats. Okay, let's take a look at the next photo. Okay, so let's see what distinguishing features we see from this shot. I mean, literally, guys, these are the only 2 photos we have. We got our X. We got our bar coming up across here in the chassis. Simple removable rear engine cage. But let's take a look at this transaxle. White with black splotches on it, right? That looks like a Dalmatian to me. We've got one-piece boots on there. Chrome tubes. Chrome end plates. I mean, this is really nice details on this car, right? This exhaust system. What is this plate? Like a billet aluminum plate with the tips coming through for those 2 turbos. Also, here's your turbo over here, intakes. We've got some nice hand-formed aluminum covers on that as well. And looks like the fan shroud, remember I was talking about those belts. The fan shroud itself also has some, looks like splatter paint. We used to do this back in the late 80s and early 90s, right? You get that stone texture from Home Depot and spray stuff up just to give it a little bit of different look. And then, looks like some standard fare headlights up there. Probably a Lacara billet steering wheel with a leather wrap. But this is all we've got. This is all we've got to go on. If anybody happens to know where this car is, he did mention that it was in Southern California. I didn't get a lot of details on it because I was super busy. But otherwise, let's see if we can help him find this car and the other cars as well. All right, let's go ahead and close this out. Okay, guys, so if anybody knows the whereabouts of any of these vehicles, please leave a comment in the comment section, right? Or go over to our Facebook group and put, hey, I happen to know one of these cars are. We'll connect you and the previous owners. Maybe you guys can work out a deal so they can buy them back, or just give them some information on what's happened to the car and what changes you made. I'm a treasure hunter at heart. I love these things, and I love searching for parts, projects, chassis, and the whole 9 yards. So this is a lot of fun for me to do. If you're looking for your car, reach out to us, YouTube or Facebook, Instagram as well. I keep forgetting to mention that, and we'll see if we can't put together an episode for your car. So let's help out Jason, Dalton, Traver, and a fella I met at the old school roundup. We'll find him and we'll get them connected back with their cars. Otherwise, thank you for watching, subscribe, and see you in the dunes.